On his way home, a man witnessed a strange scene. Two thugs were assembling heavy weapons, grinning wickedly. Joshua felt a chill of unease. At that moment, the car radio broadcasted an emergency announcement. A new epidemic was spreading rapidly across the globe. Those infected became irritable, aggressive, consumed by extreme hunger, and prone to violent outbursts. The message urged everyone to stock up on food, stay inside, and not venture out. As Joshua listened to the announcement, he drove home in frustration. His wife was preparing to take their children and evacuate as a massive storm was about to hit. Even more terrifying, according to the news, the storm was only the beginning. Earthquakes and meteor strikes were expected to follow. It seemed like the end of the world was near. Fortunately, after the storm passed, Joshua's house was not completely destroyed. Much later, he led his family outside to clean up the aftermath. Dead fish littered the ground, carried inland by the tornado. The radio reported that the entire U.S. power grid was down and phone lines were dead. As Joshua wondered how to deal with the mess, a police car pulled up outside his house. It was Earl, the town sheriff. Earl explained that the town had descended into chaos, with riots and violence everywhere, and that restoring order anytime soon seemed impossible. Before leaving, he asked Joshua to keep an eye out for his missing nephew. Not long after Earl drove away, a young man suddenly appeared at Joshua's door. He devoured food as if he hadn't eaten in days. He turned out to be Earl's missing nephew. He explained that his family had been caught in the storm in the mountains, their car swept away. Seeing he was still hungry, Joshua stood up to get him more food. But then, the young man began snatching food from others' plates. When someone told him to slow down, he snapped and violently attacked everyone in the room. He was unnaturally strong, like no ordinary human. As his mother was about to be strangled, Joshua's son Matt grabbed a gun and shot the crazed man repeatedly. That's when something bizarre happened. A shadowy figure emerged from the man's body and vanished into the air. All 5 members of Joshua's family saw it clearly. Being a university lecturer, Joshua immediately sensed this was beyond anything science could explain. His wife, Karen, horrified that their son had just killed someone, decided to go to the police station to report it, or at least find some weapons. Since she had military experience, Joshua trusted she could handle herself. However, when Karen arrived at the police station, it was completely deserted. There was no help to be found. Spotting a gun on the ground, she was about to pick it up when a caged prisoner lunged at her. Looking closer, she saw the 2 people inside the cage were no longer human. They were savage, bloodthirsty creatures, clearly infected, just like the young man earlier. Karen didn't dare linger. She rushed back home, only to be attacked at the doorstep by a black man who growled like a beast. Fortunately, Joshua rushed out in time to save her. After taking 2 bullets, the man was clever enough to flee. Both Joshua and Karen realized he was not normal either. After such a harrowing day, Joshua finally sat down to rest. He believed this apocalypse would not end anytime soon, and they needed to prepare for the worst. But Karen insisted it was just a natural disaster. They should still trust in science. Yet the next morning shattered that belief. As Joshua and his son collected trash outside, a blood-curdling scream echoed from upstairs. When they rushed to check on their daughter, it was already too late. All they could do was watch helplessly as the humanoid monster carried their daughter, Brianna, into the sky and vanished. Karen collapsed to the ground in despair, while Joshua quickly made a decision. The family would pack their things, get in the car, and follow the creature's path to find her. They set off on their apocalyptic journey, but first, they needed fuel. At a deserted gas station, Joshua noticed the pumps were deliberately locked. A shabby old man appeared, claiming the station was his. Once he realized Joshua wanted gas, he reluctantly unlocked the pumps. As they were about to leave, the man suddenly grabbed a squeegee and insisted on cleaning their windshield. Joshua refused, but the man persisted. Strangely, the water he used was red, like blood. Then, without warning, he tossed a severed human head onto the glass, terrifying the entire family. They sped off immediately, abandoning the gas. The man screamed after them, demanding payment, before grabbing a gun and firing at their car. Unfortunately for him, his cigarette fell, igniting the station and causing it to explode. Luckily, Joshua had already driven far away. While the family was still shaken, the radio blared another emergency broadcast. The military had established a containment zone in town to stop the spread of the madness. Any survivors wanting to leave the city had to go there first. Joshua resolved to head to the zone, but not without Brianna. Meanwhile, Brianna awoke in a forest to find the same monster that had carried her away lying nearby. As she reached for her phone to call her parents, the creature began convulsing violently before leaping at her with a roar. Frozen in terror, Brianna thought it was the end, until the monster was impaled on a broken tree branch. A bluish, ghost-like mist escaped its body and drifted away. Terrified, Brianna fled the forest. For a brief moment, her phone regained signal, and she received a message from her mother: head to the military containment zone in Yakima. Just then, a police car drove by. Brianna flagged it down, relieved to see Earl, the officer who had visited her house the day before. But strangely, Earl didn't seem to recognize her. Believing it safer to travel with police, Brianna climbed in. She didn't notice the bloodied hand protruding from the car's trunk. Not long after, the car stopped. Earl and another officer stepped out and performed a bizarre ritual, sending love into the earth. Confused, Brianna asked Earl when he had first met her, but he couldn't recall. Instead, he dragged her to the back of the car, where the police chief lay dying. Right before her eyes, Earl drew his gun and executed him. Horrified, Brianna froze, too scared to scream. Afterward, Earl forced her back into the car. Soon, they stopped again, lured by the smell of food. Earl pushed Brianna inside a restaurant, arrogantly waving his gun and ordering everyone to raise their hands. At that moment, a group of bikers inside refused to be intimidated, reaching for their weapons. Brianna shouted a warning just as gunfire erupted. Within seconds, both officers were dead, while the bikers remained unharmed, saved by Brianna's quick warning. The biker leader calmly approached Brianna, using a white cloth to wipe her mouth. Seeing no trace of blood, he relaxed, then explained, "Those infected always bleed from the mouth." Clearly, the two officers had been infected. With that, he dismissed Brianna and told his gang to move out. For Brianna, it felt like grabbing onto a lifeline. She begged the biker gang leader to give her a ride. At first, he didn't care, but when Brianna reminded him she had just saved his life, he reluctantly agreed. When she arrived at the emergency zone, the place was already packed with survivors. With no cell signal, she couldn't call her mother and had no choice but to search for her father's car. In the early stages of infection, victims only became irritable, showing no other symptoms, which made it hard to tell them apart from normal people. The only reliable check was whether their mouths were bleeding. Just after Joshua's family finished their check, a vehicle full of armed, screaming people came barreling down the road, classic signs of full-blown infection. Soldiers immediately opened fire. Since the emergency zone had been prepared in advance, troops were heavily armed with superior firepower. The infected attackers were wiped out before they could even step off the vehicle. The sight terrified the survivors, because the infected looked almost identical to ordinary people. Joshua's family quickly drove away, just as Karen received a message from Brianna. She had made it to the containment zone. But then, everyone suddenly looked up. A massive meteor blazed through the sky, crashing toward Earth with the destructive force of a nuclear bomb. Panic swept through the zone as people scrambled to escape. The impact carved a colossal crater in the city center, transforming the area into a hellscape of molten lava. Countless lives were lost. Fortunately, the containment zone was far enough away. Once the shockwave passed, Joshua drove his family out of the chaos. With the emergency zone in ruins, leaving was the only smart choice. They could only arrange to meet Brianna somewhere else. Meanwhile, Brianna had survived by hiding under a car, shielding herself from the blast. Not knowing where her parents had gone, she accepted a ride from a kind woman. Elsewhere, Joshua's car joined a convoy of survivors. Along the way, Karen spotted a young girl being chased by an infected. She urged Joshua to stop the car and rushed out with her gun. Worried, Joshua followed with his own weapon, while others gathered to watch. By the time Karen reached her, the girl was already dead. Karen fired twice at the attacker, but he didn't go down. Instead, he struck her, sending her flying several meters. Even with a gun, the difference in strength was overwhelming. Just as the monster was about to tear her apart, Joshua arrived and shot him, forcing a ghostly spirit to rip free from the infected body. Karen narrowly escaped death, shaken but regretful she couldn't save the girl. Having witnessed the phantom once again, Joshua could no longer stay calm. He shared his theory. In ancient myths, spirits were said to possess human bodies, driving them to superhuman feats. Perhaps that explained why the infected had impossible strength, and even the ability to fly. The family grew anxious over Brianna's fate. Then, briefly, the phone regained signal. Brianna managed to call, and they agreed to meet at their family home in Seattle before the line went dead again. Though cut off once more, at least they had a destination. As the convoy pressed on, strange lights illuminated the sky, shimmering like the northern lights. With his scholarly knowledge, Joshua explained it was likely caused by a solar flare. When the convoy stopped to rest, a survivor named Vince asked to borrow some fuel. Karen gladly agreed, since they had plenty in reserve. While everyone stretched their legs, Matt discovered that Vince's son was actually his schoolmate. Matt soon noticed that Vince's son, Donnie, was acting very strangely. Around the same time, Karen received a desperate call from her sister. She borrowed a car from the convoy to pick Sally up, promising to regroup at the next stop. When the survivors arrived at the rest area, everyone got out to grab water or use the restroom. Oddly, there were no other people in sight. Matt climbed into an abandoned car to look for supplies. Suddenly, someone tossed him a basketball. Donnie lit up with excitement and, ignoring warnings, charged toward Matt recklessly. He even knocked over a trash can and began eating the garbage inside. Matt found this deeply unsettling. It was exactly how the infected first showed symptoms. To avoid alarming the convoy, Matt kept it to himself and told only his father, Joshua, but Joshua dismissed it, thinking Matt was just nervous. Soon after, Karen returned with Sally. the convoy was ready to roll again. Donnie's arm had been dislocated during his earlier fall, and Sally, a former nurse, quickly helped set it back in place. Strangely, Donnie remained completely calm, as if the arm wasn't his at all. When it popped back into place, he showed no pain whatsoever. Sally was baffled, but Matt, watching silently, already knew what it meant. Once Donnie left their car, Matt shared his suspicions with the family, but Sally and his sister Dana didn't believe him. That night, the convoy reached another gathering point, where more survivors had set up a field hospital. Medical staff checked people's mouths for signs of infection. Ignoring Karen's warnings, Sally rushed in to offer her help. The staff told her it was too dangerous, one mistake could get her infected and killed, but Sally insisted. Suddenly, a man in a suit lunged at her, clearly infected. Karen acted fast, shooting him down before he could harm her sister. The gunfire sent survivors into panic, scattering everywhere. Joshua's convoy quickly moved out, knowing such chaos meant the place was no longer safe. On the road, they witnessed another solar flare, far stronger than before. A blinding flash lit the sky, and the static discharge caused several vehicles' electronics to fail. With no choice, the convoy pulled over to spend the night. By morning, many cars were broken beyond repair. Vince had no option but to move his son onto Joshua's vehicle. Donnie seemed extremely nervous, glancing around constantly. Only moments after sitting down, he bolted from the car. The others, confused, ran after him. Convinced Donnie was about to fully turn, Matt grabbed a gun and chased him. Donnie sprinted far, but Matt, young and fast, caught up. Donnie's voice even changed, mocking Matt as he spoke. Matt lost patience and pulled the trigger. Yet when Donnie collapsed, no ghostly spirit emerged from his body. Vince soon arrived, devastated at the sight of his son. Hearing Matt describe Donnie's bizarre behavior, Vince explained that Donnie had suffered from a mental disorder all his life. That was why he acted so strangely. Matt was surprised but unconvinced. He still believed Donnie was infected, only not yet fully possessed by the spirits. If no one stayed alert, Donnie's eventual transformation could bring disastrous consequences. A group of survivors were grilling meat by the roadside when a lone girl approached, asking for food. The men exchanged looks, grinning wickedly, as if in the apocalypse, a girl alone could be seen as nothing more than prey. But they didn't expect her to suddenly pull out a gun. Brianna herself was shocked at how depraved people had become. Thinking back, she realized how reckless it was to beg strangers for food. Just then, an off-road vehicle pulled over. A man in overalls told Brianna he had plenty of food and urged her to come with him instead of dealing with those men. Seeing no malice in him, Brianna hesitated briefly, then fired a warning shot into the air to scare off the four men and quickly jumped into the vehicle. They brought her to a sprawling farm, seemingly untouched by the apocalypse, an oasis cut off from the world's chaos. The people there were devoutly religious, forbidding swearing of any kind. Mary sternly explained the rule, though Brianna didn't care much. She only planned to stay a few days. When Brianna mentioned she was heading to Seattle, Devin, a young man on the farm, invited her to eat. Afterward, he warned her that Seattle was in ruins, but Brianna insisted she had promised her family to meet there, and nothing would stop her. Devin gave up trying to dissuade her. Perhaps because he rarely met people his age, Devin quickly grew fond of Brianna and indulged many of her requests, except for finding her a car, which was nearly impossible. While the two leaned against a fence talking, a terrifying roar echoed from above. Brianna froze. She recognized it. The night before, she had seen a massive winged creature snatch a horse in the forest. This roar was identical. The farm's residents immediately fled indoors. Later that night, when all was quiet, Devin suggested checking outside, but as soon as they stepped out, the roar returned. With no time to run, Brianna and the others dropped to the ground, feigning death. A gigantic shadow swooped overhead. For the first time, Brianna clearly saw the creature, a monstrous beast with the body of a dinosaur and enormous wings. Strangely, though it noticed them, it only paused to stare for a few seconds before flying off, leaving them unharmed. Only days into the apocalypse, the once bustling city had already become a ghost town. No signs of life, not even the bloodthirsty mutants, just an eerie, unsettling silence. Exploring on foot, they found countless abandoned cars, many with keys still in the ignition, as if their drivers had vanished into thin air. Sensing danger, Joshua urged the family to leave. They headed for his father's house, the agreed meeting place with Brianna, but when they called from outside, no one answered. Uneasy, they entered cautiously with guns drawn. The house was empty. Joshua noticed the ashes in the fireplace were still warm, meaning his father had been there only hours earlier. Meanwhile, Dana wandered into the garden and found Aunt Sally picking vegetables. In the apocalypse, food was the most precious resource. Before long, even the garden's weeds would be stripped bare. Then Dana heard a faint noise nearby. Following it, she discovered a cellar door. As she opened it, a dog burst out, knocking her to the ground and biting deep into her wrist. Sally grabbed a hose to drive the animal away, but Dana's wound was severe. The dog was foaming at the mouth, clearly rabid. They had no choice but to get Dana vaccinated. Joshua decided to head into the city to seek medical help and gather supplies, leaving only Matt behind to guard the house. Joshua quickly drove to a nearby pharmacy. Rabies vaccine was easy to find. He even grabbed a bottle of liquor. He and Karen each took a swig to stay sharp, then he searched for syringes. Meanwhile, Karen heard something downstairs. She grabbed her gun and hid behind a wall. Hearing footsteps on the stairs, she stuck out her leg, tripping the intruder. But when she saw the man clearly, he looked familiar. He quickly explained he was only there for medicine. Just then, Joshua walked over with the syringes and recognized him. It was Dr. Rollins, a local physician. Fortunate to run into a doctor, Joshua asked him to administer the vaccine for Dana, and Rollins gladly agreed. Rabies shots are injected into the abdomen and are extremely painful. Even though Dana was grown, she screamed in agony, and her parents had to comfort her until it was done. Afterward, Dr. Rollins drove off. On their way to a supermarket, Joshua spotted a recently abandoned car with a video camera inside. Watching the footage, he saw only panicked reporters and civilians fleeing, though it hinted at a new type of mutant emerging. Soon, they reached a large supermarket stocked with supplies. First, they gathered tetracycline, crucial for treating infections, before picking other items. But suddenly, a group of armed thugs appeared, demanding the family hand over all the tetracycline if they wanted to leave alive. Everyone knew how vital the medicine was. Without warning, the gang turned violent. Karen showed no fear. Exchanging a glance with Joshua, she opened fire to cover him and the children. A firefight broke out. With her Air Force training, Karen skillfully moved through the aisles, taking down 2 thugs before safely retreating with her family. Once back at the car, they realized Dana was missing. Moments later, a thug's voice echoed through the supermarket. She had been captured. They demanded Joshua bring all the tetracycline back or face the consequences. Joshua devised a plan. He returned alone, carrying the medicine and a homemade bomb. Lighting the fuse, he demanded they release Dana first. Seeing the bomb, the thugs hesitated. Eventually, they freed Dana but insisted Joshua throw over the tetracycline. Joshua told his daughter to leave, but he stayed behind, calmly holding the flaming liquor bottle. He smirked. "This is top shelf, aged 25 years. Miss this, and you'll never get another taste." Unable to resist, the 4 thugs drank. Moments later, they laughed together, as if nothing had happened, but they were fools. The poison took hold swiftly. 3 collapsed, convulsing violently, frothing at the mouth, staring at Joshua in disbelief as they died. The family's RV continued down the road until they came across several corpses scattered across the asphalt. Disturbingly, the bodies looked like they had been scavenged by birds, pierced with countless holes, their eyes gouged out. The sight alone made their skin crawl. Sally, being a nurse, checked for survivors. Shockingly, one of the bodies still twitched. As she reached out, a centipede-like creature burst from the corpse and scrambled onto her. Terrified, Sally screamed and flailed. In an instant, more bugs poured out from the other corpses. The others recoiled in horror. When crushed, the bugs multiplied into swarms. A few had already crawled onto Sally. After frantically pulling them off, the family wasted no time. They bolted for the RV and sped away. Not far ahead, the family came across a steel gate blocking the road. Joshua recognized it as part of the quarantine zone, where the insane were locked away. He wanted to go around, but Karen argued it would waste too much time. Ignoring his protests, she slammed the gas and rammed through the gate. The impact wrecked their vehicle. As they inspected the damage, a janitor appeared, offering help, but without warning, he attacked, grabbing Sally by the throat. Karen reacted instantly, firing a shot straight through his heart. No phantom emerged from the body. He was simply one of the insane. With their car disabled, the family pushed it into a repair shop inside the quarantine zone. Soon, strange welts began appearing all over Sally's body. It might have been caused by the bugs that had crawled onto her earlier, though she brushed it off as an allergy. Karen divided tasks. Joshua would repair the car while the children scouted the area. Since Dana had never fired a gun, only Matt carried one. Dana, still irritable and restless from last night's rabid dog bite, trailed behind. Before long, the siblings stumbled upon a quarantine area nearby. At first glance, it looked like people drunkenly dancing, but in truth, they were victims of the madness, unable to control themselves. One woman feigned innocence, pleading that she wasn't infected but had been locked up anyway. She begged Matt to release her. Her mannerisms seemed convincing, so Matt tested her, asking, "Do you know a doctor named Rollins here?" She confidently claimed she did and beckoned Matt closer, whispering she'd tell him more privately. Trusting her, Matt approached the fence, only for dozens of infected to lunge, clawing and grabbing at him. Dana froze, unable to aim at her brother. Just as the mob was about to sink their teeth into Matt, gunfire erupted. Several infected fell, giving Matt a chance to break free. The shots came from a soldier wearing sunglasses, backed by another in an armored vehicle. The soldier ordered Dana to put down her gun, then checked both siblings' mouths for signs of infection. Though he found none, after a brief exchange with his comrade, he still resolved to kill them as a precaution. Terrified, Dana pleaded, explaining their parents were in the repair shop and they were only here searching for Dr. Rollins. The soldier, named Cottrell, hesitated, then marched them back. Inside, they found Joshua working on the car. Seeing his son in custody, Joshua froze, powerless to intervene. Ever vigilant, Cottrell forced them to disarm, shining a flashlight into their mouths, ready to shoot at the first sign of infection. Once satisfied, Cottrell explained they were Air Force reinforcements. He questioned why they had smashed through the gate. At that moment, Karen emerged from hiding. She revealed her own Air Force background, even trading recognition codes with Cottrell. Finally, trust was established. After a brief discussion, Cottrell admitted he needed Matt and Dana's help. In return, he'd assist their family in finding Dr. Rollins. Hearing about Sally's bug infestation, Rollins wasted no time. He quickly performed surgery and extracted several insects from her body. The bugs were nearly impossible to kill. Crush one, and it multiplied into smaller swarms. The three of them bolted out of the infirmary, slamming the door shut to contain the infestation. But the moment they turned, they were met with another horror. Hordes of infected surrounding the auto shop. The quarantine zone had collapsed. Luckily, Joshua had just finished fixing the RV, and everyone scrambled aboard. Yet the infected weren't entirely mindless. Hearing Dr. Rollins say there was medicine inside, they rushed into the infirmary. Seizing the chance, Rollins locked the door behind them, leaving the crazed patients to face the bugs. Just then, one of Cottrell's comrades snapped. He raised his gun and shot Rollins. Clearly, he'd gone mad. The Joshua family sealed their RV and sped away. At the same time, Cottrell returned with Matt and Dana, along with a group of infected captives. Both vehicles roared out of the compound. At the exit, Cottrell urged Joshua's family to leave quickly while he and his men stayed behind to handle the infected. In truth, there was no saving them. They would die sooner or later. Seeing Cottrell's resolve, Karen didn't argue, but Sally suddenly insisted on staying to help. Knowing her sister's stubbornness, Karen reluctantly said goodbye. Then, chaos erupted. Another of Cottrell's soldiers opened fire. Madness had consumed him, turning him violent and bloodthirsty. He even commandeered a tank to kill indiscriminately. Cottrell acted without hesitation, putting his comrade down. Joshua's family wasted no time, driving off to find Brianna. Meanwhile, at the farm, the young man in overalls was cleaning when he glanced through a crack in the door, and froze. A young woman was washing herself with precious water. In this apocalypse, water was rarer than gold, so Brianna could only keep her clothes on, wiping herself with a wet cloth. For the boy, it was the first time he had ever seen such a sight. Embarrassed and overwhelmed, he looked away quickly, afraid he couldn't control himself if he stared any longer. Not long after, a middle-aged man in overalls entered Brianna's room. He was the farm's priest. The night before, a dragon-like creature had attacked, seizing a cow, yet it hadn't harmed Brianna, even though she lay right in front of it. Many in the farm began to believe she had ties to the demon, that she was a witch. The priest, outwardly calm, sent his servant away, but as soon as they were alone, his eyes changed. He lunged at Brianna, strangling her while growling in unnatural tones. The truth was horrifying. He himself was possessed. The noise alerted the servant, who rushed back in. Instantly, the demon vanished from the priest's body. Quick-witted, the priest accused Brianna instead, claiming the demon inside her had attacked him. As the farm's spiritual leader, the priest commanded absolute trust. Brianna, a lone outsider, had no credibility. She was locked in a barn, branded an evil witch, and accused of trying to harm him. Brianna knew if she didn't escape soon, she would be killed. She searched desperately for a way out. That night, Devin came to her secretly. To her shock, he admitted he believed she was a witch. In just 2 short days, he had fallen in love with her. Others claimed she had bewitched him, ensnaring him with dark magic. Brianna was left speechless, but deep down, she realized the boy, 2 years younger than her, truly did love her. Brianna seized the chance, playing on Devin's feelings. She told him she cared for him too. After hearing her tender words, Devin's resolve melted. He agreed to help her escape. Meanwhile, the priest was plotting how to deal with Brianna in the barn. He had no idea Devin had stolen a gun, slipped inside, and freed her. The two fled together. By morning, the priest discovered Brianna was gone. Out in the woods, she and Devin quickly lost their way. Devin, blinded by love, followed her closely. The priest, empowered by the demon within him, with superhuman senses and strength, tracked them down with ease. Brianna ran desperately until she reached a highway. From afar, she spotted a familiar RV. It was her father Joshua's. Just as hope surged, the priest lunged from the tree line, knocking her down. Devin fought bravely, kicking at the priest, but his blows were useless. Brianna seized the moment, drew her gun, and fired straight into the priest's heart. The demon ripped free, and the priest collapsed, dead. At that moment, Joshua's RV pulled up. After days apart, the family was finally reunited. Everyone praised Brianna's bravery in killing the possessed priest. Grateful to Devin for helping her escape the farm, Brianna made sure he was acknowledged. Without delay, they all climbed aboard and drove off before more infected could appear. Elsewhere, a group of mindless infected in an armored vehicle pursued survivors, forcing them to a dead end by the lakeside. With the enemy's firepower overwhelming, escape seemed impossible. Then, like an avenging warrior, a masked rider appeared on a white horse. His skull mask glared, a grenade launcher in hand. Charging forward, he blasted the armored truck, then switched to rapid gunfire, tearing through the horde. In less than 30 seconds, the mysterious figure annihilated them all. Joshua's family watched in awe, their jaws hanging open, wondering who this formidable man was. Karen studied him closely, then called out his name, Booner. When he removed his mask, surprise flickered across his face. He was indeed Booner, her old military comrade, and long ago, her lover. After catching up briefly, Booner revealed he had built a fortified shelter deep in the woods 2 years before the apocalypse. There, he made the rules. He invited Karen's family to join him. Karen thought it a good idea. The 6 of them could follow his directions to reach safety, as long as they avoided the main roads where crazed mobs roamed. Booner rode ahead on horseback, while Joshua's family followed by RV, but within minutes, the path ended abruptly. Before them lay a massive crater, like the impact of a meteorite, filled with foul water and blood. Surrounding them were only trees, no trail, no road, nothing like Booner had promised. After discussing, they agreed to split up and search for a way forward, leaving Karen and Brianna at the RV to wait. Matt and Devin paired up to scout an open field. As Devin trailed behind, he spotted something on the ground. Picking it up, his blood ran cold. It was a severed arm. Worse, the flesh had been gnawed, likely by some creature with razor-sharp teeth. Elsewhere, Joshua took Dana to search for a path. Exhausted, she sat to rest while her father pressed on. Oblivious to the danger of idling in the woods during the apocalypse, Dana plucked flowers, as if on a carefree picnic. Then, a strange sound echoed. A massive vine had coiled around her leg. Dana screamed. Hearing her cries, Joshua and Matt rushed back. Within moments, half of Dana's body was being dragged underground. Joshua whipped out his knife, slashing the vine apart. He pulled her free, and the 3 sprinted back to the RV, slamming the doors shut. Drawing on his knowledge, Joshua realized the plant was a jubako, legendary vampiric trees from folklore. The apocalypse wasn't only mutating humans, but plants as well. They thought the RV would shield them, but the vine slithered through the cracks, writhing inside. The family grabbed knives, hacking furiously to keep it out. Joshua tried starting the engine, only to find the electrical system dead. He stepped out to check, with Matt covering him. Just then, 2 motorcycles rolled up. Their riders hurled something at the vines, and instantly, the plants shrieked and sank back into the earth. The men explained they were Booner's men, sent to escort Joshua's family. The substance they'd thrown was rock salt, lethal to the vine creatures. After helping repair the RV, they led the family to Booner's shelter. The shelter had been built before the apocalypse by retired Air Force soldiers. Stocked with weapons, ammunition, and supplies, it could sustain life independently for years. Strict rules governed the place. Isolated and self-sufficient, it was controlled solely by Booner. Seeing his ex-girlfriend's family join him, Booner brimmed with pride. Over dinner, he revealed the shelter had originally been built as a project for fun, yet it became their salvation when the end came. With more manpower, he would have expanded it, but even now, its reserves could last for years. Suddenly, Karen heard a scream. Stepping outside, she froze. A woman in white, glowing, floated in the air. The source of the scream. Terrified, Karen slammed the door shut. Whatever she'd seen, she was certain no one else had. She retreated to the RV to rest, but soon, alarms blared across the shelter. Outside the gate stood a woman, pleading for help. Karen's eyes widened. It was her sister, Sally. Rushing to the guards, Karen begged them to open the gate. They refused, fearing infection. As the standoff escalated, Booner arrived. The guards were simply following protocol, but Booner, concerned for Karen, ordered the gate opened. Still, he warned her, if Sally carried the sickness, Karen would have to let him deal with her. After 2 days apart, the sisters finally reunited. Karen learned the quarantine zone had completely collapsed, and Sally had barely survived thanks to Cottrell's escort. Suddenly, Cottrell appeared outside the shelter's wall. He was clearly infected but hadn't fully mutated yet. Sally rushed to check his wounds, insisting medicine could still save him. Booner knew better. Killing Cottrell was the only smart choice. Karen accused him of being cold-hearted, ignoring their old bond as comrades. Reluctantly, Booner compromised, allowing Cottrell to be taken to the infirmary. The next morning, alarms blared again. This time, scouts reported 40 to 50 infected emerging from the forest, a terrifying number. Each host carried a demon, giving them far greater strength than ordinary crazed victims. The entire shelter was mobilized, weapons in hand at the perimeter. But Booner remained calm. He had planted explosives outside in advance. One by one, detonations ripped through the trees, obliterating the infected before they even reached the walls. Dark spirits rose into the sky, the threat snuffed out with ease. At that moment, Cottrell stumbled out of the infirmary, dragging Sally with him. His eyes had turned white. he too was possessed. Karen, seeing Sally's neck about to snap, fired instantly. To her horror, the bullet passed through Cottrell and struck Sally. Cottrell's grip finished the job, breaking her neck. Screaming, Karen fired again, this time into Cottrell's head. The demon fled his corpse, but it was too late. Sally lay lifeless at her feet. In this apocalyptic world, the survivors chose to leave the safety of the shelter and split into groups for missions. One vehicle headed to a university library in search of research. It had been a week since the collapse. The campus was in ruins, void of life. Yet Joshua stumbled upon a professor seated calmly in a classroom. He recognized her, an expert in theology. In a past paper, she had written predictions eerily similar to the apocalypse now unfolding. That was why Joshua had come, to find that thesis. But the professor claimed she couldn't remember where it was stored, urging Joshua to search. While he scoured the room, she suddenly crept behind him with an axe, swinging at his head. Joshua narrowly dodged. The professor shrieked inhumanly and chased him, gliding unnaturally fast. Just as she was about to strike, a gunshot rang out. A bullet pierced her skull. To Joshua's shock, her body dissolved into a puddle of black liquid and vanished. The shot had come from the security officer accompanying him. Stunned, she watched the scene, while Joshua explained, it was a shapeshifter, beings from legend that could mimic anyone to kill their prey. Though shaken, Joshua pressed on, more convinced the real professor was still here. And indeed, after more searching, he found her. This time, she was composed, even pouring him a glass of wine. Joshua insisted her thesis held answers worth studying, but she confessed she no longer had it. Though part of her research might still be in the room, she told him to look for it himself. After searching for a long time, Joshua still found nothing. Instead, the professor began showing strange symptoms, rabies. Her temper grew more volatile until, finally, a bullet pierced her heart, and she collapsed. It was the security officer who pulled the trigger, unable to watch the professor suffer any longer. Joshua felt deep regret. The woman had been a rare talent, her knowledge and foresight could have been invaluable in the apocalypse. Meanwhile, Karen drove to a nearby base to scavenge supplies. She and Matt scouted the perimeter, while Dana and Martin headed to the food storage. Since the shelter, the two had grown closer. Now, it felt like a date. In the storage, distracted by intimacy, they didn't notice a vine slithering from a haystack, wrapping around Dana's leg. Within moments, she was dragged outside. Martin chased after her, slashing the vine with his knife to free her. The two bolted, only to be stopped by two armed survivors. Dana and Martin had no choice but to surrender. The two women were base members. To them, these outsiders were looters who couldn't be tolerated. Dana tried to warn them to watch their feet, but they ignored her. Seconds later, one of them was yanked away by vines. Martin pulled Dana to safety while the survivor, realizing her comrade was doomed, shot her to end her suffering. That survivor, Jessie, was grief-stricken. She rushed to alert two more allies, blaming the vine creature on the intruders. The three vowed not to show mercy. At the same time, Karen and Matt, alarmed by gunfire, hurried back for Dana but were ambushed. Stripped of weapons, Matt was forced to hand over supplies. Karen argued they only took from the abandoned base, but the women were ruthless. Roz punched Karen in the face. Using the distraction, Karen stabbed Roz with a hidden knife while Matt overpowered another. With guns back in their hands, they quickly turned the tide, forcing the last woman to surrender. Desperate for Dana's whereabouts, Karen demanded answers. Roz coldly claimed the two kids had already been killed. Overcome with rage, Karen snapped. She shot Roz dead, then another, and emptied her clip into the final captive, ignoring her pleas. Just then, Dana returned, horrified by the scene. She couldn't believe her mother had done this. Though Karen tried to explain she thought Dana was gone, Dana could only see a stranger in her mother's place. Elsewhere, Brianna sat in the RV. When Joshua returned, she asked if he'd found the documents, but his expression was strange. Suddenly, he swung an axe at her. Devin intervened just in time. Together, they realized this wasn't Joshua, it was a shape-shifting creature. To Brianna's shock, Devin subdued it with ease. His eyes turned white, the mark of a skinwalker. He too carried a demon inside, though he still had control. With brute force, Devin snapped the imposter's neck. It melted into black liquid and vanished. When the real Joshua returned, he quickly drove to regroup with Karen. Dana recounted what happened, convincing everyone that even more terrifying creatures lurked in this apocalypse. Later, Devin stepped out of the RV, laughing loudly. Concerned, Brianna followed. Devin admitted he felt the demon inside him growing stronger. Unsure how much longer he could hold it back, he begged Brianna to kill him before it took over. But after all they'd been through, Brianna had fallen for him. How could she possibly pull the trigger? As Brianna and Devin tried to comfort each other, the demon suddenly took control of him, choking her. Martin rushed in with a gun, but Devin disarmed him. With the weapon in hand, Devin froze, clearly fighting for control. After saying his final goodbye to Brianna, he forced his own hand to pull the trigger, blowing his brains out and expelling the demon once and for all. Not long after, a monk appeared in the middle of the road, blocking their RV. He wore a suit, carried a briefcase, and walked barefoot. His strange behavior made him seem more infected than human. The group got out to search him. In his bag were only odds and ends. When Joshua asked who he was, the man calmly said he was a monk and that this was his new body. Even he didn't know how he had arrived. Joshua was puzzled. Meanwhile, Jane, keeping watch, spotted a glint from the brush. A gunshot rang out, forcing everyone to scatter. The monk, however, stood still, smiling as bullets flew past. Strangely, the sniper never aimed at him, only at the others. Joshua was hit in the stomach and collapsed. Suspicion grew that the monk might be working with the shooter. But then the monk raised his arms toward the brush, and an explosion erupted, killing the sniper instantly. Everyone stood stunned. Once it was safe, they rushed Joshua back to the RV. The monk followed, claiming he could heal him. After witnessing his powers, Karen reluctantly agreed. The monk rubbed his hands together as if performing a ritual, pressed them against Joshua's wound, and reached inside to pull out the bullet. Joshua passed out, and the monk calmly stitched him up with tools from his bag. Watching with her own eyes, Karen was forced to believe this man was no ordinary human. Joshua soon woke, fully conscious. The monk then revealed a dire warning. A nearby volcano was about to erupt, and the only road out had been destroyed by an earthquake. Sure enough, a massive ravine blocked their path. The monk insisted the only way was to climb back to the crater, locate a stone formation, and perform a ritual to stop the eruption. It sounded insane, but with no other options, and after seeing his powers, the group agreed. Karen and Jane would go with the monk, while the others searched for shelter. Climbing up the volcano, the three found a strange stone formation. The monk explained it was a ritual circle. Whoever stood inside could pray and make a wish strong enough to prevent the eruption. Karen was supposed to step in, but Jane suddenly turned her gun on them. She wanted to use the ritual to resurrect her dead son. Ignoring the monk's pleas, she shot him dead. Karen could only watch in shock as Jane entered the circle. At first, nothing happened. They began to suspect the monk had tricked them, but then the stones glowed, lifting into the air. The ritual activated. Moments later, Jane was sucked into the earth and vanished. Karen sat in disbelief, unsure if Jane's wish had been granted. Then, impossibly, the monk appeared beside her, alive and well. He urged Karen to follow him, warning that the volcano was about to blow, but Karen refused to abandon her family. The monk only told her she might outlive the others. When she turned back, he was gone. Karen no longer cared. Escaping the volcano was all that mattered. While Joshua was driving, the group came across a man and a woman asking for a ride. Martin was at the wheel, and kind-hearted Dana convinced him to stop. The strangers claimed they had just escaped the volcanic eruption and lost a teammate. They only wanted a ride. Joshua warned them the volcano was about to blow. The escape route was already cut off, and the only chance of survival was to find shelter. If they didn't mind, they could join the group. The pair, Steve and Anna, seemed confused. Why look for shelter instead of a way out? Still, they reluctantly agreed to ride along. Joshua and Brianna both sensed something off about them. Why would they be wandering near the volcano at all? But Dana believed she was simply doing a good deed. Later, when the RV stopped in a dense forest, Steve pretended to help Dana with her luggage but instead held her hostage. He and Anna demanded everyone surrender their guns or they'd slit Dana's throat. Joshua realized their real goal was to steal the vehicle. As tensions rose, Matt tossed the keys away. Martin stepped up to calm things down, relying on his military background to talk them down. But before he could, Anna panicked and pulled the trigger, her shot killing Martin on the spot. Everyone froze in shock. Anna herself looked horrified at what she'd done, but the damage was done. Their weapons were seized, and Joshua nearly lost control, ready to kill her then and there. Dana wept over Martin's body, while Matt, enraged, tied Anna up and prepared to execute her. The others looked on in fear, but after a moment of hesitation, Matt stopped, choosing to let her live. Joshua then made the final call, release them. He reasoned that with the volcano erupting, without shelter they wouldn't survive anyway. Moments later, the ground shook violently, rocks tumbled down as the volcano erupted. The group had no choice but to flee, leaving Martin's body behind. In the chaos, Dana became separated, while Karen struggled to escape on her own. When the eruption subsided, Matt and Dana stumbled upon a massive creature. It thrashed twice before collapsing dead. Terrified yet curious, Matt touched its body to confirm it was lifeless. Dana noticed feathers and giant wings on its body, resembling the mutated dragon Joshua had once described from myth. They circled the carcass and regrouped. Their shelter had held, protecting them from the eruption, and their vehicle was intact. Joshua and Brianna, who had hidden under the RV, were also unharmed. Seeing the dragon's corpse, Joshua was stunned. As a university professor, he theorized it was a prehistoric creature that had somehow crossed into their world, but crashing into the volcano had killed it. There was no time to study it further. Karen had been trapped in a rock cave but was eventually found alive. Though they had lost people, the 5 remaining family members survived. Joshua decided it was best to return home and regroup. But when they arrived, their house was in flames, the surrounding farm destroyed, likely the work of rabid infected. Two neighbors rushed in, one clearly deranged. Joshua immediately grew wary, while Karen simply handed them a gun for self-defense. With their home gone, the family abandoned the idea of settling down and set off once again into the unknown. At the same time, on a distant mountain, a flying dinosaur appeared. Less than a month into the apocalypse, biker gangs had already set up roadblocks, extorting survivors at gunpoint. Dressed in denim, armed with rifles, and riding motorcycles, they looked like outlaws from before the end times. But today, they picked the wrong family to mess with, the Joshuas. Instead of cowering, the family calmly drew their guns. As the gang debated what to do, Karen swiftly aimed her gun at the leader's head. He tried to fight back, but in seconds, Karen had disarmed him, forcing his men to drop their weapons. Shockingly, the gang leader turned out to be Ewan, Karen's estranged father. Recognizing each other, they had an emotional reunion, and Ewan brought the family to his settlement. Ewan proudly introduced his sanctuary, a paradise with no rules, where everyone lived free and equal. Survivors revered him, food and safety were abundant, and he dreamed the camp could grow into a city. He took them to a makeshift lab, where a short, eccentric pharmacist was busy at work. This man had created sumicin, the only drug that could suppress the rabies-like infection. It not only kept the settlement stable but was also valuable for trade. Ewan offered Karen's family a permanent place there, even roles of leadership, but Karen and Joshua declined, choosing only to rest for a few days. During their stay, Ewan showed Matt around. Seeing his grandson's love for motorcycles, he gifted Matt his favorite bike and encouraged him to stay, even suggesting Matt could one day inherit the settlement. Tempted but knowing his mother would object, Matt only rode for fun. Later, Ewan assigned Matt and his sisters a mission: accompany his men to secure a new supply of sumicin ingredients. Though uneasy, he let them go, warning his men that failure would cost them dearly. They arrived at a bar to meet the supplier. For the siblings, it was their first time inside such a place since the apocalypse. After a few drinks, they relaxed, while the guards stayed alert. But soon, Dana and Brianna, tipsy, started arguing over past grievances. In a fit of anger, Dana yelled, "Get out!" Stunned, Brianna stormed off. Before leaving, she swiped the keys from one of Ewan's men. Driving away, Brianna picked up a girl on the roadside, but the stranger pulled a knife, sniffed her, and creepily licked her face. She claimed she didn't want blood, only the car. Taking the keys, she sped off, straight back toward the bar. Alarmed, Brianna sensed danger and rushed back. Inside, she found a horrifying sight: another Brianna standing there. The two identical figures brawled viciously, leaving everyone confused. Even Karen couldn't tell them apart. Dana raised her gun, insisting she knew who the real one was. A single shot rang out. Silence fell. The imposter collapsed, melting into a pool of black liquid before vanishing. Shaken, Brianna recalled the strange girl who had sniffed and licked her earlier, proving she wasn't human at all, but a shapeshifter able to mimic anyone. No one expected Dana to tell the real Brianna apart from the fake. She explained that because they used to fight a lot as kids, she remembered one detail: Brianna was left-handed in a fight. With that, the imposter was exposed. Soon after, the group discovered why their contact never showed up at the bar. He and one of Ewan's men had already been killed by a monster. Back at the compound, Karen found Joshua dazed at the gate. Once he saw his family safe, he revealed what had happened. He had seen men carrying bodies into a shipping container. Inside, he found it stuffed with corpses. Before he could escape, he was knocked out, tied up, and confronted by Ewan. The truth came out: every dose of sumicin distributed in the settlement had been deliberately sabotaged by the pharmacist. He was trying to engineer a new version that could fully cure rabies. Test subjects were kidnapped survivors, and many had died in the process. Ewan defended the decision, but Joshua refused to condone it. Knowing Joshua would expose the truth, Ewan ordered his execution. His men planned to stage it as a brawl gone wrong, but they underestimated Joshua. Even drugged with hallucinogens, his medical knowledge and survival instinct let him kill his captor and escape. When Karen heard the story, she realized how ruthless her father truly was. She punched him in the face and cut ties once and for all. The family packed up and drove off. Though Ewan warned them to take 2 bags of sumicin for the future, Karen dismissed him coldly. The Joshuas hit the road again, safer on the move than in a treacherous safe zone. On their way, they found grotesquely stretched corpses. Joshua discovered a photo among the bodies: a family of 3, missing only a young boy. A broken watch on one corpse had stopped at 1:40, a detail that seemed important. Suddenly, Joshua coughed up blood. The family panicked. It was rabies. With sumicin gone, they had to find more fast. After searching several pharmacies, Dana only found an empty box, but it had an address for a treatment center. They rushed there as Joshua's condition worsened. The center was massive, and finding the drug could take hours. No one knew if Joshua could hold on that long. Karen made a tough call. Matt would stay in the RV to watch Joshua, chaining him for safety. She and the 2 girls would search the building. they scoured floor after floor, but after a month into the apocalypse, the shelves were stripped bare. On the next floor, a man with a knife lunged at them, only to be shot in the head instantly. At the end of the hall stood a nurse, gun raised, ordering them to drop their weapons. After a tense pause, Karen complied. Cautious words turned into fragile trust. Karen explained her husband was infected and needed sumicin. The nurse thought for a moment, then agreed to give them some, on one condition: they had to help her move wheelchair-bound patients downstairs, since the power was out and she couldn't manage alone. Karen accepted without hesitation. Leaving her daughters behind, she followed the nurse upstairs. Along the way, the woman asked why Karen had refused medicine before. Karen shared the truth about her cruel father. The nurse smirked and said, "You should have taken those 2 bags of sumicin, would have saved you all this trouble." Karen and the nurse reached the top floor, where an old woman sat in a wheelchair. Suddenly, the elevator behind Karen opened, even though the nurse had said there was no power. Realizing something was wrong, Karen turned, only to be injected in the leg. The drug acted fast, and she collapsed. Down on the second floor, Dana and Brianna were still searching for medicine, unaware of the danger their mother was in. Just then, a strange sight unfolded in the sky. Meteors slammed into the moon, and within seconds it shattered into pieces. Witnesses on the ground were horrified. One old woman laughed hysterically, her face twisted in madness, until the nurse shoved her off the balcony in rage. Soon, the nurse herself began coughing up blood. She knew exactly what it meant. She revealed her true motive: to turn Karen into a specimen, punishing her for Ewan's crimes. Her husband had been one of Ewan's victims, and she had been waiting for revenge. When she asked why Karen refused Ewan's medicine, Karen admitted the truth, sealing her fate. The nurse wheeled Karen into a surgical room, preparing to dissect her alive. She had even saved anesthesia, not to spare Karen pain, but to make sure she felt every cut. Karen wanted to explain she had cut ties with her father, but she couldn't speak. Just as the blade lowered, the lights went out. Thinking the breaker had tripped, the nurse went to check, only to be struck from behind by Brianna and Dana. Earlier, they had discovered piles of corpses and human specimens, realized the nurse was a monster, and cut the power to lure her out, but instead of finishing her, they only knocked her out. They found Karen strapped to an operating table. Still sedated, she couldn't walk, so they put her in a wheelchair. Brianna restored the power. Dana pushed their mother toward the elevator, when suddenly a masked attacker ambushed them, knocking Dana unconscious. As the nurse taunted her about becoming a specimen, Karen quietly grabbed a gun and fired through her chest. Brianna arrived just in time to finish the job with several more shots, making sure the nurse was dead for good. But the search for sumicin was a failure. All they found were antibiotics and painkillers. The nurse had lied from the start. At least they had stopped a murderer. Yet when they looked up, the shattered remains of the moon were falling toward Earth, signaling another disaster. Joshua's condition worsened. He drifted in and out of consciousness, muttering nonsense. Desperate, Karen prepared to head out again with Matt, leaving Dana and Brianna to guard their father. To suppress the rabies symptoms, they sedated him into a coma. Karen made a pact. Whoever found sumicin first would mark the windshield with a glove. 2 months into the apocalypse, spatial vortices began opening in the sky, sucking people away. Watching in horror, Karen realized the area was no longer safe. They had to find sumicin and escape. But the woman they met delivered crushing news: all supplies of sumicin were gone. Still, Karen refused to give up. Meanwhile, Matt went out searching for sumicin and came across a girl. He helped her, but instead of thanking him, she snapped at him for meddling. Matt didn't take it to heart but asked if she had any sumicin, since his father's life depended on it. Watching him walk away, Sarah later chased after him and handed over a vial she had hidden. By sheer luck, or fate, this ended up saving Joshua. On his way back, Matt marked the car as his mother instructed, but when he returned, Joshua had vanished and Dana lay unconscious on the ground. Joshua had gone rabid, knocked Dana out, and fled. Moments later, they heard noise outside. Brianna had been captured by a small group of survivors, demanding the sumicin or they'd kill her. Matt couldn't give up the precious medicine, so he instructed Sarah to circle around and ambush them. After she shot one of the men, Karen arrived just in time to back them up. Furious at seeing her daughter threatened, Karen forced the group to surrender. Dana and Brianna argued against killing them, so after some debate, the family spared them, confiscating their weapons instead. The group split up to search for Joshua, each carrying a dose of sumicin. Meanwhile, Joshua had been captured by townsfolk who wanted to execute him once they realized he was infected. At the last second, a female journalist rushed in to save him. Joshua was nearly lost to madness. Without medicine, he would have become just another rabid corpse. Karen finally reached him, administering the sumicin. She recognized the journalist. It was the same one they had encountered before. Strangely, she had reappeared here, claiming Joshua might be the key to uncovering the cause of the apocalypse. Suddenly, the skies roared with violent winds. A vortex appeared, and the reporter panicked, bolting, only to be sucked in and vanish. Karen and Joshua narrowly survived. It seemed the vortex had chosen its target deliberately. The medicine worked, and Joshua returned to normal. Sarah then officially joined their group. Not long after, they came across people dancing in the streets, oblivious to the doom hanging above. The shattered moon's fragments were about to rain down on Earth within hours, threatening all life. The family sought out Moondog, a mystic scholar studying the apocalypse. He explained that the space vortices were actually miniature black holes capable of pulling in the moon's fragments. His plan was to use a massive magnetic tower to trigger a vortex and absorb the debris before it could strike. Elsewhere, Brianna and Matt set out to find Sarah. During the trip, Matt excused himself but didn't return. When Brianna went looking, she caught him kissing Sarah. Stranger still, Matt asked if they had a car, even though they had just driven there together. Alarmed, Brianna realized something wasn't right. She knew her brother better than anyone, but the more she watched him, the less he seemed like the real Matt. So the question remains, is this really Matt, or an imposter? And will Joshua's family and Moondog succeed in saving Earth? The answers may only come in the next season of Aftermath. That's the full story of Aftermath. What did you think of this movie? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.